At the end of last year, Japanese shipping giant Mitsui OSK Lines spent $1.8 billion to place a large order for 6 LNG carriers with a Chinese shipyard. But what people didn't expect was that just a few months later, they announced to the world that they would completely suspend orders from Chinese shipyards in the future. In other words, they don't plan to let China build ships anymore. Why did Japan suddenly say no to China's shipbuilding industry? Behind it is actually a new policy launched by the Trump administration. On April 17th this year, the United States announced that it would impose a new port surcharge on shipping companies that use Chinese-built ships. This fee is calculated based on the net tonnage of the ship or the number of containers, whichever is higher, and may be charged up to $1.5 million at a time. If your ship is built in China, you will have to pay more when you dock at U.S. port. If the ship is built in the United States or a friendly country like South Korea, you can enjoy fee reductions or exemptions. The goal of this U.S. policy is quite clear. On the one hand, it wants to support the long-declining shipbuilding industry in the United States, and on the other hand, it aims to curb China's competitiveness in the global shipbuilding market. But the question is, can this U.S. policy really curb the rise of China's shipbuilding industry? If Japan does not look for China to build ships, who will they give the orders to? If you like our video content, please click to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can receive all our latest video content. Now, let's get into today's topic. Everyone knows that the shipbuilding industry itself is a collection of 3 intensive industries: technology, labor, and capital. But 60 years ago, China not only did not have decent modern shipbuilding technology, but also had tight funds, and it was difficult to even gather a group of qualified shipbuilding workers. Later in 1997, China spent more than $5 million to introduce membrane LNG ship technology from GDT, France. After several years of continuous research, Chinese researchers finally developed the first generation of domestically produced LNG ships in 2018 and successfully delivered them to domestic shipyards. But from that time on, China's shipbuilding industry also began to rise. By 2010, China's shipbuilding completion volume reached 65.6 million deadweight tons for the first time, a year-on-year increase of 54.6%. The newly received ship orders reached 75.23 million deadweight tons, of which the seagoing part was 56.95 million CGT. Among them, export ships accounted for 84.6% of the total. It is worth noting that at that time, China surpassed Japan and South Korea for the first time in the 3 key indicators of shipyard completion volume, new orders, and backlog orders, becoming the world's first. By 2024, China once again broke the historical record. Their total global shipbuilding orders were 65.8 million CGT, accounting for 71%. This figure has increased by 34% compared to 2023. Moreover, the total orders held by major Chinese shipbuilding companies have reached 208.72 million deadweight tons. Among them, Denmark placed an order for 40 LNG dual-fuel container ships with China this year, with a total cost of up to $8 billion. So from these data, if China continues to develop at this speed, there is no doubt that it is very likely to control more than 80% of the world's ship orders in the future. However, since Trump came to power, he has found that China has risen wildly in various fields. Subsequently, he formulated a series of policies to suppress China, including a 245% tariff on unilateral trade and a ban on the export of high-performance chips to Chinese companies. Of course, the shipbuilding industry, as China's main pillar industry, has also been sanctioned by Trump. In April of this year, the United States announced that it would impose a new port surcharge on all shipping companies that use Chinese-built ships. This policy will be implemented in October. Interestingly, they even asked Chinese shipping companies to actively cooperate with this policy. So what is the purpose of the United States imposing a surcharge on China's shipbuilding industry this time? In fact, The port surcharge proposed by the United States this time is actually specifically aimed at the Chinese shipping industry. Because in the regulations, the United States will charge fees based on two indicators: the net tonnage of the ship, or the number of containers, and the higher amount of the two. From the perspective of policy implementation, it is implemented in stages. The first 180 days is a buffer period during which the fee is zero. But starting from October 14th this year, it will enter the first stage. According to regulations, the United States will charge the so-called maritime service fee of $50 per net tonnage to any ship operated by China or owned by Chinese companies. This fee is not collected all at once, but increases year by year. In addition, in this policy, the United States has also put forward a more concrete requirement. Starting from April 17th, 2028, at least 1% of all transport ships used for liquefied natural gas exports must be American-made ships. But they seem to have forgotten the fact that about 17% of the transport ships currently in operation in the United States are built by Chinese companies. But since Trump proposed this policy, it has indeed had a certain impact on Chinese ships. In May this year, Japan's Mitsui OSK Lines announced that it had suspended its orders for Chinese LNG ships. According to the original plan, Japan intended to expand the number of LNG-fueled ships ordered from China to about 90 by 2030. Prior to this, Japan had signed a construction agreement with China for 6 large LNG dual-fuel ships, including 2 309,000-ton LNG dual-fuel VLCCs and 4 210,000-ton LNG dual-fuel bulk carriers, with a total value of more than $1.8 billion. As far as I know, this 309,000-ton ship is a very large crude oil carrier that uses LNG as its main fuel. Compared with traditional fuel ships, its environmental advantages are very obvious. For example, when using LNG fuel, carbon dioxide emissions can be reduced by 25% to 30%, and nitrogen oxide emissions can be reduced by about 85%, which fully meets the environmental protection standards of the third phase of the International Ship EEI. As for the 4 210,000-ton LNG dual-fuel bulk carriers, this type of ship has excellent performance in terms of fuel and gas economy. EEDI is about 44% lower than the international baseline value. Sulfur oxide emissions are reduced by more than 90%, and nitrogen oxide emissions are also reduced by more than 20%. In pure gas mode, this type of ship can complete 2 round trips between China and Australia, as well as a single round trip on the China-Pakistan route, with very strong comprehensive performance. But now, because of Trump's port surcharge policy, Japan is no longer willing to continue cooperating with China and may be forced to turn these orders to other countries. However, can the United States really develop itself by suppressing China's shipbuilding industry in this way? According to the data I have investigated, the current share of the U.S. shipbuilding industry in the global market is less than 0.1%, while China accounts for more than 40%, and South Korea has nearly 30%. In this comparison, the gap can be said to be a world of difference. In addition, the current U.S. shipbuilding industry is also facing a lot of problems. The first is the cost issue. Their shipbuilding costs are surprisingly higher than any other country. Take a standard 174,000 cubic meter LNG carrier as an example. The price of building in China is about $200 million, while it may cost $300 million to build it in the United States, and the cost may even be 30% to 50% higher. In addition, the delivery cycle is also a major difficulty for them to develop the shipbuilding industry. As far as I know, some major shipyards in China and South Korea can generally deliver an LNG carrier within 24 to 36 months, while American shipyards generally need 36 to 48 months or even longer. This is very fatal in the international shipping market that emphasizes efficiency and cost control. Compared with China, the largest container ship currently under construction in the United States has a capacity equivalent to 3,600 standard containers, which is far lower than the average carrying capacity of container ships docked at U.S. ports in 2024. China's current shipbuilding capacity is 232 times that of the United States. Looking around the world, nearly 70% of the new ship orders are built in Chinese shipyards. Some international giants are even more dependent on China. For example, Denmark's Maersk, about 14% of its entire container capacity is made in China, and the world's third largest container shipping company, up to 36% of its ship capacity, comes from China. All this shows a fact. China's shipbuilding has an irreplaceable position in the global shipping industry chain. However, regarding the port surcharge, some ship owners have indeed begun to avoid Chinese shipyards due to cost issues. But interestingly, ship orders did not flow to U.S. shipbuilding companies, but to South Korea. Now, many people in the industry are saying that the final winner of the port surcharge proposed by the United States this time is likely to be South Korea. Is this really the case? As far as I know, as early as the early 1980s, South Korea's annual shipbuilding capacity jumped rapidly from 2.8 million tons to 4 million tons, mainly due to the then famous Okpo shipyard. By the end of the 1990s, South Korea already had 7 shipyards with an annual production capacity of more than 1 million tons, successfully surpassing Japan and becoming the world's top shipbuilding power at the time. But now, South Korea has begun to be overtaken by China. At present, the number of large shipyards in China has reached 50, of which more than 30 have an annual production capacity of 1 million tons. Moreover, China also has 70 large docks with a capacity of more than 100,000 tons, including several giant docks of 300,000 tons and even 500,000 tons. In terms of hardware strength, China has left South Korea far behind. It is worth noting that the decline of South Korea's shipbuilding industry is not without reason. The first is the problem of supply chain dependence. At present, about 25% to 30% of the parts and raw materials of South Korean shipyards rely on China. From basic steel to key marine equipment, China has become their indispensable supplier. This means that if the competition between China and the United States over the shipbuilding industry escalates further, South Korean shipyards will face huge operational risks. In addition, South Korea is now facing a very realistic problem: tight production capacity. At present, the orders of several major shipyards in South Korea have been scheduled until 2027 or even 2028. If customers like Mitsui OSK Lines transfer orders to South Korea, it will only make their shipbuilding cycle longer and the delivery pressure greater. According to data, the cost of building an LNG ship in South Korea has risen from about $220 million last year to $250 million now, an increase of more than 13% in just 1 year. This price is actually no longer competitive in the international market. In the short term, the port surcharge policy proposed by the United States this time is indeed a big blow to China's shipbuilding industry, and it may even face the loss of some orders. According to statistics, in 2023, the LNG carrier orders received by Chinese shipyard accounted for about 35% of the global total orders, but by the first half of this year, this proportion may drop to about 25%. However, in the long run, China's shipbuilding industry still has 3 irreplaceable advantages. First, cost advantage. The cost of building LNG carriers by Chinese shipyards is 10% to 15% lower than that of South Korea, and 30% to 50% lower than that of the United States. China's current construction cycle for LNG carriers has been shortened from 30 months in the past to about 24 months, and the overall efficiency has been significantly improved. Moreover, China has mastered a variety of mainstream technical routes, such as membrane LNG ships and square-hull LNG ships, and is fully capable of independent construction. Compared with other countries, Chinese shipyards are not completely dependent on the international market. China is currently the world's largest importer of LNG, with an annual import volume of about 70 million tons. Such a huge demand naturally requires a large number of LNG carriers, and these orders will of course be given priority to domestic shipyards. Of course, all international ship owners will not give up Chinese shipyards because of U.S. policies. International ship owners who mainly operate in Asia and rarely call at the U.S. port may continue to choose Chinese manufacturing. So, although the Trump administration's revitalizing the shipbuilding industry plan this time seems to be very impressive, there are indeed many difficult problems to solve at the practical level. So, do you think Trump's plan will succeed? To not miss out on our future projects and news updates, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We will continue to provide you with more exciting and interesting content.